So I'm not sure how good our audience size is after the coffee break. This will determine how popular this session is, obviously. That's quite a number back, so thank you very much for coming back in. Welcome to session 5. The title is Integrity, Tackling New Age Threats. Obviously, integrity is a key word in horse racing. It's fundamental to the success of horse racing and fundamental to any sport. If you don't have integrity, if the public doesn't believe in the integrity of the sport, then public confidence will drop. We have no viewers, no fans, etc. So it's a core for success. I really must thank Goto-san and the JRA for hosting us here. Your great kindness this week is extraordinary, and what you're showing us of Japanese culture and food, most importantly. So what we're going to do today is, as I said, talk more about integrity, because if we titled this session Illegal Betting, I think a lot of you would be saying, there's that very tall British man again talking about illegal betting again. And we do turn up every year on this subject. But as the chairman of the ARF mentioned, it's critical for success of racing and wagering racing in the future. And perhaps if I could just say why. Well, firstly, we have this council, and this is the ARF Council. To give it its full name, the Asian Racing Federation Council on Anti-Illegal Betting and Related Financial Crime. No acronym for that, I'm afraid. And it's been in existence from 2017. Actually, we were working on this set of research for many years before that in Hong Kong, but it was actually Winfried who proposed formalizing it under the ARF, and we've been doing this for 7 or 8 years. And I must say, Winfried and Andrew Harding then proposed that because it's from the Asian Racing Federation, we move this across to the International Federation of Horse Racing Authorities. And that's because we're already having an international impact, that's very clear. The stakeholders we engage with are in all regions, but quite often when we go to certain stakeholders, they tend to say, well, that's an Asian problem, and you're coming from Asia. And it's clearly not, it's a global problem. So actually the council and the program will move under the International Federation of Horse Racing Authorities from October. And that's basically just a name change. As you can see from the logos of some of the people who are representative on the council, including my 4 colleagues here, it's rather broad. A number of people from horse racing organizations and authorities, a number of people from universities we were very proud to have, and we will add to that in the future as we expand, and a number of people from international organizations. You can see on the bottom row, United Lotteries for Integrity in Sport, Interpol, and Ronan from United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. So it's a very broad-based group. There are others whose names are not here, who we're very proud to have as members. I would highlight Graham Ashton, former Commissioner of Police from Victoria, and also the former CEO of the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission. So 2 former commissioners of police, one at a state level, one at a national level. So we're very pleased to have them and the insight it brings to this group. And we will expand, as I say, from October into other regions to engage more stakeholders. That will be quite a challenge. And why are we doing that? Well, we'll explain in due course. Obviously, illegal betting is growing. You've heard us talking about it a lot in the past, and talking somewhat about this in the past session today and earlier. Why is that important? It is a fundamental threat to racing integrity. We've always felt that from Hong Kong, from the Hong Kong Jockey Club. Race manipulation of the running of any sport is largely, we believe, in illegal betting markets, because obviously it's obscured and not monitored. But there's also a financial impact and a financial risk, and that's the bigger challenge that we're facing now in the leadership of the ARF, and I would say the World Tote Association have been talking about as well. This migration of customers away from betting on racing in legal licensed markets into illegal markets, and then the complete loss of financial contribution from legal operators to racing. So that doesn't just affect legal betting operators, it affects the funding of racing as well. The loss of consumers decreases racing betting revenue, that decreases financial contributions to racing. There's a fundamental connection there. What we talk about a lot from the council is it's not just a problem for racing and sports. There are some serious social problems that arise from this. We won't say the same things today, but we're going to talk a little bit more about disruptive technology, because obviously technology is changing not only in illegal markets, but legal markets as well. But James Porteous will talk shortly about how disruptive technology, which he's focused on for research, is fundamentally changing betting markets. So I could briefly introduce the panelists, first of all, so you know who they are. I'll start with Tom Chignell, the very dignified man in the grey suit. Tom is Executive Manager, Racing Integrity Betting Analysis, Hong Kong Jockey Club, and basically his work is to better define bet monitoring models to protect integrity in racing and other sports. And Tom works in the racing division in the Hong Kong Jockey Club and works closely with racing authorities and other jurisdictions, because I would say that Tom, who came from the British Horse Racing Authority, is probably the leading betting analyst executive in the world for racing, and one of the most prominent for all sports, frankly. On Tom's right, Ronan O'Lear, a crime prevention criminal justice officer, program on safeguarding sport from corruption and crime, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. And Ronan has been a member of the ARF Council, I think, from the start, so we're really grateful for his contribution to this. And why? Because the UNODC, the program he runs, is to protect sports integrity around the world. So Ronan runs a global program for the UNODC, immensely challenging and complicated, and is engaged in programs around the World Cup, the Olympics, and the stakeholders in each region involved in those competitions. Cleaner Guy, Head of Licensing, Legal and Compliance, Legal Counsel, the Irish Horse Racing Regulatory Board. Obviously, a leading racing administrator working to manage the evolution of racing regulation in the face of threats to integrity from all fronts. And I would also mention Cleaner's not just a racing administrator, she's a true sports administrator, which is great for racing. Comes from Irish football, Gaelic football.
Soccer,
Sorry. And boxing before that. So racing, soccer, boxing, and understands sport intimately. You might have noticed that although we have a lot of Australians on the council, and some people say the A stands for Australia, perhaps under IFHA the I might stand for Ireland, because we have James, Ronan and Cleaner from the Emerald Isle, so they're well represented today. But we'll start with James Porteous, who's Senior Due Diligence and Research Manager at the Hong Kong Jockey Club, and for the ARF Council is the Head of Research. James leads all of our research, sets the research themes, and does most of the work, I think it's fair to say, on the writing for that. And James has focused in the past year on disruptive technology, the threat to integrity in racing and other sports. So we'll have a brief presentation from James just to kick off, to sort of set the scene on what's happening in disruptive technology. James, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. Tom and I were sitting at the back as the last panel discussion increasingly covered illegal betting, and we were maybe getting increasingly discomforted, wondering if we'd have anything left to talk about. Thankfully, illegal betting is such a big issue and is so complex, there is plenty to talk about. We heard this morning how technology is transforming the legal wagering industry for the better, which is obviously terrific news. I'm here with some bad news, which is that the exact same holds true for our competitors in the illegal market. And actually, worse still, because the illegals have zero regulatory overhead and zero concerns about reputational or ethical considerations, about how they deploy technology to market to consumers, to attract customers, and to boost their turnover, we found at the Council, the theme of the last 2 years is that technology has turbocharged illegal betting. It's turbocharged the marketing of, the access to, and the customer base for illegal betting. So technology means that it's easier than ever to become an illegal bettor. Okay, in Asia, you no longer have to, quote unquote, know a guy, an illegal betting agent in your street or at the local pub. In fact, in many regions in Asia now, you're lucky if you can avoid illegal betting agents spamming you via messaging apps, SMS, and on your social feeds. This is because the customer recruitment commissions for illegal betting agents are now so potentially lucrative that they are massively incentivized financially to exploit every technological platform and every online media going in increasingly novel ways, whether that's the mass automation of WhatsApp spam and spam on Asia's other popular messaging apps like WeChat and Line, to hiring influencers on Instagram and other platforms to market illegal betting through attractive videos, even inventing entirely fake sports news websites, which are actually just fronts for their illegal betting platforms, to developing AI chatbots on Telegram and other platforms. So, yesterday we heard in one of the sessions about the importance of reducing friction when it comes for the customer. Well, in the illegal betting markets, friction has been essentially eliminated. You no longer have to seek out these platforms. They come directly to you with a ping to the smartphone in your pocket. How effective is this technology-led marketing? Well, in a word, very. This chart shows traffic to one bookmaker, who I won't name. And the blue line shows its monthly visitation versus the gray line, which is the industry average for sports betting. And as you can see, over about 3 years, traffic has grown about 16 times. Right? We'd all love to see such incredible charts for our own traffic and our own turnover and our own customer acquisition, but it's highly doubtful any of us would be comfortable with some of the means used to acquire this traffic. A large portion of this traffic comes from technology-led marketing on pornography websites. A large part comes from illegal movie download sites, and a large part comes from pirate sports live streaming sites. So, naturally, if you think about it, if you're marketing a product, which by definition is illegal in the jurisdictions where many of your customers are based, you're not going to care if the means of marketing are similarly illegal or sketchy at best. More worryingly still, I feel, is that many bookmakers are now marketing directly to Gen Z and Gen Alpha digital natives on the platforms where they are most comfortable, things like Discord, TikTok, Twitch, platforms people like my generation and many people in the room might have a very limited awareness of at all. A case study is that of Twitch.com, which, for those who don't know, is a live streaming platform owned by Amazon, which specializes in video game live streaming and is hugely popular with millennials, under 20s, and almost all of its viewership is under 30. A couple of years ago, particularly cryptocurrency bookmakers started paying the most popular live streamers literally millions of dollars to stream themselves gambling online to their hundreds of thousands of followers. Now, it sounds crazy to me. It doesn't sound like very compelling content, and I don't know why you'd want to watch that, but evidently that's why I'm up here and I'm not lounging on my yacht, because it was evidently so successful that when Twitch, in the face of a media backlash, finally banned some forms of gambling promotion, one bookmaker simply said, okay, I'll set up my own rival live streaming platform and I'll lure some of the most popular live streamers over with multi-million dollars so I can continue this process. So if you think of the ROI required to justify that kind of expense, you can imagine the profits that were being generated through this technological form of marketing. And just as an aside, many of these platforms, including the example on the screen, as you can see, the biggest sources of traffic are from India, Brazil, Argentina, Indonesia, China, and yes, Japan. Obviously, all jurisdictions in which this particular operator was not licensed to operate. The ARF chairman highlighted in his keynote how cryptocurrency has also been a massive boost to illegal betting. According to one gambling database, there are 25% more so-called grey market or offshore bookmakers which now accept crypto, more than 800 compared to when we looked at this data in 2020. Obviously, there's no data for the completely unlicensed black market, but from personal observation and experience, I'd say it's almost 100% of operators. And remember, whether we say offshore, grey market, black market, this is all illegal betting and defined as such by the ARF Council. These are operators who take bets in jurisdictions like Hong Kong, like Australia, like Japan, where they're not licensed to do so. And obviously, a primary attraction of cryptocurrency, if your business is in taking bets in jurisdictions where your customers are not licensed to bet or are not permitted to bet, is that cryptocurrency makes it much easier to move money across borders. It's much harder to track and trace, even if governments or law enforcement in those countries would have the urge to do so. And the flip side for the punter, who typically would not know that these platforms are illegal or unlicensed in his or her jurisdiction, is that it makes that payment much more easier without banks or credit cards flagging transactions. I did a little experiment. How easy is it to find such sites? Just in case you think I'm exaggerating. I don't speak Japanese, but with the help of Google Translate, in the matter of a minute, I found affiliate marketing websites promoting cryptocurrency bookmakers, 30 of them, in Japanese, highly localized, as Michael Fitzsimmons mentioned, the importance of localization to customers, offering Japan racing and indeed every other ARF jurisdiction racing and all of the IFHA top 100 races. So that took me a matter of minutes. And a key message that we keep stressing through the work of the ARF Council since the last ARC is that this is not just us coming to bash the competition, right? Obviously, these illegal wagers are highly competitive and unfairly competitive against the legal markets, as we heard in the last panel. But even more worryingly still, many of them are linked to global organized crime. That is a fact. Illegal betting is a pillar on which these organized crime groups depend for funding, and it funds many of their other criminal enterprises as well. And the Asian Racing Federation was one of the first organizations to highlight how the exact same organized crime groups who run illegal betting are also behind the global epidemic of cyber fraud, which emanates out of Asia but affects the globe. And indeed, they used many of the same technological tools and techniques they learned from illegal betting, such as mass automation of spam on messaging apps, unregulated cryptocurrency exchanges, and more, to apply to this new business line. And literally, tens of thousands of people are being held to work in this industry against their will in so-called casino compounds across Asia. So when we say illegal betting is not a victimless crime, it really is. It has real impacts for real people. Another aspect of technology boosting illegal betting is that, we mentioned it's never been easier to become an illegal bettor. It's also never been easier to become an illegal bookmaker. That might sound paradoxical given the complexity of the technology. But because Asia's largest sports betting operators have franchised out their technology through APIs and white labels, if it's easier than ever to set up a betting website, or more accurately, a network of literally hundreds or thousands of mirror illegal betting websites. If you want to become an illegal bookmaker, they will provide you with literally everything you need, from your trading, risk management, odds, pirated live stream of sports, customer relationship management, crypto payment processing software, etc., for as little as $7,000 US. The advert in blue here is from one of Asia's best-known sports betting operators, which has been around for at least 25 years. I won't name it. They are litigious, but it'll be well known to everybody in the industry, I'm sure. And you can see their API promises access to 30 plus different sports, multiple bet types, 14 different languages, a trading room of 400 plus traders, and its pyramid network of thousands of street agents. So the would-be illegal bookmaker now doesn't need any expertise in sport, odds making, taking a position on events, doesn't need any IT understanding. He's completely freed up to focus on recruiting ever more customers. And this franchising is what we called at the ARF Council the McDonald'sization of illegal betting. It's bringing illegal betting to the masses. A case study which exemplifies all of these themes is CityBet. Regular ARC attendees will be familiar with CityBet, whose untaxed and unregulated turnover is comparable to some jurisdictions' legal turnover, as a massive threat to both the business of, but also the integrity of horse racing. Well, now that threat has never been greater. Now, CityBet is not only available through its own network of agent-only websites, but on literally thousands of other URLs via this franchising model. And that's not an exaggeration, literally thousands. And it's agents, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, are using every technological tool, social media promotion, etc., to drive customers and acquire new bettors. The three images on the bottom show the typical user acquisition flow here. You receive an advert on your Facebook feed or through a spam text message promising 14% rebates on horse racing. You think, wow, that sounds good. That's a lot better than I can get with my current operator, i.e. the legal market. So you click through. You land on a website in your own local language, which claims to be licensed, obviously is not, but the typical punter does not know the difference, and offers, as well as these very attractive price discounts, a whole host of other sports betting products not available in your local region, as well as other gambling products such as online casino, digital slots, etc. And of course, including, as was mentioned in the last panel, every single top 100 IFHA race in the world. You know, I think the last panel said in Hong Kong we offer 23. Well, at these platforms, not only do you get every major overseas race, you get it at large discounts. So you can see why they are attractive. Out of curiosity, I sat down with a stopwatch and I timed how long it took me to go through this user flow. And from clicking on an advert to registering and opening an account to watching ARF racing in glorious pirated high definition took me 78 seconds. Less than 2 minutes. We learned a couple of things from that. One, I need to find better things to do with my time. But two, this is massively expanding the potential market for CityBet and these other operators who follow a similar model. It's bringing illegal betting to the mass market in a way like never before. So to sum up, at the last ARC, we showed how illegal betting had surged during the pandemic for a range of reasons, such as stimulus checks and the move to online entertainment, etc. In 2024, with hopefully the pandemic in the rearview mirror, it's clear that that surge in illegal betting, that was not temporary. That has been sustained for these reasons we've touched upon. Unlicensed illegal betting platforms, which are highly competitive on price and product, have massively expanded through technology. It's never been easier to access illegal betting. It's never been easier to set yourself up as an illegal bookmaker. It's never been easier for both parties to move money and fund accounts. And it's never been easier to bet illegally on global horse racing. So I think I've laid out some of the problems there. I'll leave it there, and hopefully my colleagues on the panel have some solutions. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. James, that's a terrific opening introduction. I'd just like to mention also that James and Tom and I and several of our other colleagues were at the International Stewards Conference earlier in the week. And it was a very good presentation from representatives from Japanese Kirin Racing. And after we came out, by coincidence, a very old friend of ours showed us a screenshot of Citybet just starting this week to offer Kirin Racing. Which is an exchange, obviously. That's why we're always worried about it. It's a betting exchange where you can lay on runners in racing, but Kirin now being offered on Citybet as well. So this threat is real, and it does evolve. And I think we need to understand a bit more about that as that develops. That's our next research area. So James, thank you very much. You set the scene, I think, for what's happening and what's going to happen. And I think also followed on from the last session, because we can see there's great innovation for customers from legal licensed betting operators, from the Hong Kong Jockey Club, UK Tote and others, but they almost have one hand tied behind their back. And we're not suggesting that they should be able to offer betting in cryptocurrencies, but the problem is that those other technological innovations are available elsewhere. So we do have solutions, and we're not talking about defeating the illegal market. Illicit economic markets will always exist in certain products. And Michael Fitzsimmons mentioned earlier about the music industry. That problem in the music industry with pirated music has not completely disappeared, but it's been reduced because of practical solutions from the industry itself in how legal music is sold. And that's the same for betting on horse racing, betting on other sports. How do we protect the sport of racing and other sports for integrity, but how do we ensure that there are appropriate betting solutions to constantly undermine the illegal market? So in terms of protection and integrity, we'll turn to Tom Chignell. Tom, to remind you, is a betting analyst by trade and has plied his trade in Britain and Hong Kong and understands these markets extremely well. Tom, could you explain to us how you assess this core betting integrity threat to horse racing?
Well, the threat to horse racing is the betting integrity threat remains high. And one factor behind that is the illegal betting market. But what is the core betting integrity threat? It's predetermined underperformance. So jockeys purposely riding in a way to ensure that horses are not going to win or not be placed, to do this to ensure that bets are successful. Now, we've seen recent investigations, I think charges were announced in Victoria in May this year against a couple of jockeys for corruption and betting integrity breaches. In the last 24 months, we've seen high-profile jockeys in Hong Kong and New South Wales subject of bans through betting breaches. This isn't unique to horse racing. This is a challenge faced by all major betting sports across the world, and all sports now attract major betting markets. So underperformance in the NBA, predetermined underperformance to ensure that bets were successful, has meant an athlete there has been banned for life recently. Because he was leaving the court early to ensure bets were successful. So it's not unique to horse racing, but it's exceptionally important that horse racing understands the threat and can manage that threat. And to do so, it really needs to be aware of the betting markets, who the operators are, what markets are available on horse racing, and have the right systems and processes in place to ensure that right data is captured, processed, assessed, understood, and then communicated to the right people so that action can be taken. In addition to corruption, I think it's fair to say when you're purposely manipulating an event for betting purposes, that is corruption. The other threat, betting integrity threat to racing, is the misuse of inside information. Inside information, what is it? There's lots of sports which have a definition of inside information. They're all fairly consistent. Privileged information, them misused for betting purposes, tends to be a breach of the sport's rules. So in horse racing, that might be a vet or a stable employee knowing that a horse has had lameness issues, but it's still going to race. And that information is not in the public domain, it's not with the press, it's not reported anywhere. And that stable individual might go on and lay that horse in the knowledge it's highly likely going to underperform compared to previous performances. So that's a misuse of inside information. And how much can be won? That really depends on the size of the betting markets on your racing jurisdiction. So I'm obviously working for the Hong Kong Jockey Club, and it's quite common for us almost at every single race meeting to see lay offers on city bets, as referred by James Porteous, of in excess of $200,000 on an individual horse in an individual market. Now, that's not the liability. The liability, if it's a 5-to-1 shot, could be greater than $1 million. So we're talking about substantial sums. And yes, we talk about CityBet, and Hong Kong racing is a major product of CityBet. But there are other illegal market operators betting on global racing jurisdictions who are acting in a similar way. So every time those type of lay offers are made, it's highly important that the racing authority or sports integrity team is aware and then can act upon that information. So the illegal market continues to be a major integrity threat for racing, and this isn't new. This is something that we talked about, but just why? Lack of KYC, betting with anonymity, complex agent structures making it very difficult to conduct investigations. You've got no condition of license for the illegal market to report to you guys, the regulators, the racing authorities, the sports integrity teams across the world. And with horse racing, I think public confidence is exceptionally important. I know it got raised earlier, but seeing is believing when it comes to a punter in horse racing. And if you don't believe that you've had a fair run for your money, you can take that money and bet on another sport or spend it on another leisure pursuit. So the integrity threat, Martin, in horse racing remains high, and the illegal market and the growth of the illegal market is contributing to that.
And I must say, actually, I've known Tom for around 15 years. When I first met him when he was in the British Horse Racing Authority and I visited London, it's extraordinary how we look exactly the same after 15 years, I must say. But going back that 15 years, from the BHA to here in the Hong Kong Jockey Club, you've seen a lot of changes in this threat to integrity. Has that evolved? How is it evolving over 15 years from what you've seen in Europe, what you're seeing in Hong Kong and around the world?
Yeah, I wouldn't even go back 15 years. I'd say the last few years, Martin, and I think some of the key points have been touched upon, how that illegal market continues to grow and is certainly on an upward curve, particularly in jurisdictions where there is a lack of supply and supply by the regulated market. And I think one thing which I think we're all kind of like talking about since we've been here the last couple of days is this increase in regulation on the regulated betting market. But not only the regulated market, but as we've seen in the UK, with its customers too. And how's that impacting sports integrity? Well, if the illegal market grows, there's greater potential for reward, for corruption, for the misuse of inside information. So the integrity threat goes with that growth of the illegal betting market. I think certain jurisdictions have got bigger problems than others. I mean, those without a strong tote, those who are relying on fixed odds operators, customers, recreational gamblers trying to get a bet on now with a fixed odds operator over the past few years have seen extraordinary amounts of account restrictions, not getting any size of bet on. So if you can't bet in your market, if you can't bet, as Joe said from the BHA, with a regulated operator, what are your options? You can stop betting on racing, and that's not a great position for racing to be in, or you can explore illegal betting market options. So that is highly relevant for jurisdictions which rely on those fixed odds products. But why are fixed odds doing this? Well, they're doing this, as it was touched on earlier from Entain. You had a situation which was pressed upon about the increased costs, the increased regulation. Where is the balance? Because at the moment, fixed odds operators are quite keen to transfer racing customers away to higher margin products. Bet builders came up earlier, a massive high margin product, and there's no doubt if you go on a sports book, that's what they want you to bet on. And unfortunately, that's not horse racing. I think what's happened in the UK, Martin, you touched upon it earlier, is a prime example where you have these large bet restrictions alongside intrusive affordability checks. It's not a healthy situation, but it's not just the UK. America at the moment has grown this regulated market, and in America, customers are now facing similar bet restrictions. Some of the gambling regulators there are, it's going to be very interesting how that goes, because they're not appearing to take the same approach as some gambling regulators, and are actually coming down on the side, potentially going to come down on the side of punters. So that's all reasons why there's been this, or some reasons why there's been this illegal market growth. Outside of that, we've seen white labels, I think mentioned by James. Asian-facing white label operators piggybacking on the credibility of a UK Gambling Commission license to market globally by sponsoring the Premier League. Seeing the Premier League adverts, seeing whether it's on the shirt or around the ground. Again, this is growing the integrity threat, it's growing an illegal market. These white label operators are targeting jurisdictions where they're simply not allowed to operate. We've seen an increase in prominence of lightly regulated operators. Operators of very light touch regulation, effectively buying a license or a paper license. There's no obligation for these operators to report on suspicious betting, and actually some are not actively responding to some of the global sports integrity investigations across the world. There are operators who are betting fixed odds on horse racing across the major jurisdictions sat here, and the racing authorities are not receiving information, or sports integrity teams are neither receiving that information. These are all supported by data companies. They're being provided by companies. Data companies will say, hang on a minute, these companies are licensed. Yes, they're licensed, but they're posing an integrity threat because they're not working with sports or racing. Some data companies have also been providing data to the illegal betting market, which again has contributed towards that growth. But what we've seen is some real key factors pushing that illegal market growth, Martin.
We need to talk about what we can do about it, obviously. We've talked for many years about the threat and the problems, but there are some solutions to this. The obvious one, of course, is clone Tom Chignell, but that technology is not even available at the Hong Kong Jockey Club yet. Not yet, I'm sure we can soon, but what can racing and other sports do to protect themselves from these threats? You've done this for the Jockey Club, you've done it for BHA. It is a hard program to set up and run, I would say, having seen what Tom does. It's not particularly cost intensive, but the expertise required is challenging. What do you think is the set of solutions?
Well, I think focusing on licensed persons, I think it's exceptionally hard to, if you're a sports regulator, if you're a racing authority, how can you protect your sport or horse racing? It's going to be exceptionally difficult and challenging to follow the money when it comes to investigations. But I think racing and sport should seek to try and create that environment where those tempted by corruption are fear of being caught and therefore do not go down that route. How can they do this? Well, it really is a case of going back to understanding that betting integrity threat and assessing what are the high-risk markets on your sport. So with horse racing, high-risk market might be a match betting market where you have one horse to beat another. There might be 20 horses racing in a race, but to have one horse versus another has always been a high-risk integrity market and has over-featured in horse racing investigations in the past. And then having in place effective processes to capture betting data across both illegal and illegal betting markets, processing that data, assessing it, and as I mentioned earlier, the importance of communicating that information to racing stewards, allowing them to act on race day potentially speaking to connections about tactics, or taking the investigation further by scanning communication devices. But if you're not aware, you can't take that action. It's simply guessing and acting on rumours. All this needs to be supported by clear betting rules, which enables the participants of the sport to really know what their obligations are, and to ensure that what a betting breach is made clear to all who are participating.
And how important is technology in these solutions? We talked about how technology is a threat, but what about the solutions?
I think it's an opportunity, and I think it's been a bit of a theme of this conference. It provides a real opportunity for racing and sports to enhance their bet monitoring processes and to capture a larger proportion of the betting market. Racing authorities now have an opportunity to take a data-driven approach, something which wasn't available to them, let's say, 10 years ago, as cheaply as it is now, as accessible as it is now. 10, 15 years ago, you may need a large IT team. You may need large IT resources. It's going to be very costly. You might need big manpower. Technology has made these processes and putting in place these monitoring tools far more accessible for all horse racing regulators, I would say. And we're talking about the basics behind bet monitoring is cloud computing, and that's made accessible through user-friendly programming languages. There's all these organizations here at this conference are going to have clever people who can now code in R, who can now code in Python, and that gives a huge amount of opportunity to build these models. At the Hong Kong Jockey Club, we're making use of machine learning. We're about to do something with conversational AI to make our searches of our bet monitoring and queries that we're asking the data a lot more effective and efficient. However, if you can capture bets, if you can process it, if you understand what suspicious betting is, technology provides an opportunity for all racing authorities here to make their processes far more efficient and effective. So when suspicious betting is identified, it's communicated to the racing stewards.
Yeah. And finally, for you, last question for you, Tom, before we go across to Ronan. So we've heard this week about Whirlpool, the growth of Whirlpool, clearly this collaboration amongst the racing authorities and operators that deliver Whirlpool is terrific. But as Jason mentioned earlier, Whirlpool is the elite level of racing, really, from these Group 1 races in the IFHA Top 100. And as Jason mentioned, in Australia they have, four race meetings per day, a huge number of races in the UK and the US especially. So what are the integrity threats between this system of elite racing and then this huge number of lower class races? And because obviously we know from what we do with other sports, a lot of the competition manipulation tends to be in lower level leagues in other sports. So how would you say the future threats look in racing for integrity?
Well, I think one of the largest threats is that the illegal market becomes normalized for the average racing punter.
Yeah.
We're talking about the recreational market. We're not looking at the high-end professional syndicate who obviously is dedicated to maximize their profit. We're looking at the recreational punter. And there are a number of key factors which are really driving this movement away from the regulated market to the illegal market, or again, stopping betting on racing altogether, because that's the other option. I think Claire mentioned yesterday, talked about supply and demand, and it's such an important factor. The illegal market is growing far greater in jurisdictions where there is the demand but not the supply, and the supply is under threat by, I think, greater regulation and costs. So the transfer across to the illegal market, which is a very high-profile betting integrity threat, is going to be triggered if the supply of the illegal supply of a regulated market, such as can you bet on the sport that you want to bet on? If that's not available on the regulated market, they go to the illegal market. If price isn't competitive, they'll switch over. If you've got these account restrictions or have to jump through hoops for affordability checks, there's that temptation to go over to the illegal betting market. Now, some racing jurisdictions here have in place maximum bet limits, and we've seen maximum bet limits actually, maximum deposit limits brought up by your presentation earlier, Martin, and. While this is very, well intended to manage gambling harm, these discriminate against a vast number of wealthier gamblers. Are they fit for purpose for the less wealthy right at the bottom, or is a single number only suitable for about 3%?
Yeah.
And that's potentially what's happening there. And so for those vast number of wealthier gamblers, they're going to obviously look for illegal market options and contribute towards the illegal market growth. And on this, it is a very sensitive topic, but can data, can technology help in that space rather than a single number and create the illegal market growth? Yeah. Things, just quickly, I think other benefactors of the way things are going. Obviously, James mentioned cryptocurrencies, very, very important, but also bet brokers, providing access to the illegal betting market. There are some very sophisticated websites over there allowing access, and I think they're going to do very well. It's absolutely essential for bet monitoring teams to keep up to speed with changes to the market and how that illegal market is evolving.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom. We're going to have more questions for you in due course. But I want to cut across to Ronan so we have time. So Ronan, as I mentioned earlier, we've worked together for quite a few years now as well, and we're really delighted to have someone from the UNODC on as a member of the council from the formation. But why? Perhaps because obviously the audience doesn't know why we work with the United Nations. We're very proud to do so. Why is the United Nations interested in corruption in sport?
Yeah, thank you, and yeah, great pleasure to be here, and thank you for the invitation. And I think, I suppose the question is, why are we actually sitting on a panel? I'm here representing the UN, but the topics we're speaking about, what's so important about them in the UN context, and I think it bears, I think, taking a little bit of a step back to think about the impact that sport has from a socio-economic perspective. And I was actually thinking a little bit about how, just looking at the example of the Hong Kong Jockey Club and how the charitable nature of its work and how we frame the threat of illegal betting, corruption in sport, and how that has a negative impact on the benefits that sports can bring. And I think from our perspective, at least from the UN, we've moved from just thinking and talking about the threat of match fixing or competition manipulation to looking at sport in general and the role it plays in society and how we can protect it from the different type of threats that we're discussing. And I think now we're speaking about illegal betting, and we need to keep going about that. But we also need to link it with some of the other threats that we're hearing about and seeing a lot of action in. And here you can think about illegal betting with competition manipulation, but then also money laundering, conflicts of interest, fraud, abuse of authority, but applied to a sports setting, whether that's the transfer of athletes, the buying and selling of horses, the administration, the organization of sports events, but then couching that in terms not only talking about integrity, but talking about organized crime, the threat that poses to sport. So the last few years, governments are paying much more attention to all of these issues. And I think it's an interesting time in that debate because, the time in that negotiation and discussion, because it used to be an area that was, governments were uncertain who should take the lead on these issues. Is it the Ministry of Sports issue? If it is, they're not really well equipped to do investigations, to do sanction, to sanction some of the wrongdoing that they're seeing. But if it really is illegal, who should step up to the plate and take that forward? Anti-corruption authorities? Is it financial investigation units? Is it the police? And so over the last few years, what we're really seeing is an investment by governments to pay more attention, to understand better how they can use and apply their laws in the sports setting. And that's at least what we're doing. We're working with sports organisations and criminal justice authorities to help them get better at preventing, detecting, prosecuting, investigating, and ultimately sanctioning all of these problems that we're seeing. And I think where we are now, why are we not getting better at stopping illegal betting? I think that's something we need to discuss, and we hope we get more of a discussion around that on this panel. But the threats, they're evolving, they're changing, and we need to get better strategies to tackle them more effectively.
I'd like to ask you about how we define corruption in sport as well. And I should just say for the rest of the audience that when we talk about sport, because we do work with other sports as well, we use consistent language. We say racing and other sports. And this is quite important for us because we need to tell other sports and other stakeholders in sport and governments that racing is a sport. I personally don't like to describe racing as an industry. And I think there's some danger in that, especially with the opposition to racing from people involved in horse welfare. If we talk about it as an industry, there's some negativity to that. If we talk about it as a sport, we position it with other sports, and that's important. So how do you define corruption in sport and racing as a sport? And what are the key concerns for the UN when you look at the threats to corruption in sport?
So yeah, we spoke about this yesterday. It's also very risky to come up with a universal definition or to try to get one. So instead, the way we look at it is to more describe some of the threats and to give a kind of a framework so that we understand it from a more holistic perspective. So here I'd say we've got sports-related corruption, sports-focused corruption, and then there's the interlinkages there with organised crime. So sports-related corruption, like I said earlier, it's those things that we know about already. It's money laundering, conflicts of interest, abuse of authority applied to sports context. And then, of course, the more specialised forms of corruption in sport, illegal betting, competition manipulation. So that's how we're framing things. It's not an exhaustive list, but we found a very useful entry point to be able to do the type of awareness raising, capacity building, to get governments and sports organisations to get better at working together to tackle these problems jointly. And I think that's something in particular for horse racing in general. We've been collaborating a lot with the International Olympic Committee, with FIFA, it's the regional football associations, World Rugby, International Cricket Council, World Athletics. We're hoping to engage more with horse racing associations and authorities to give that space for those interests to be talked about and discussed at the global level in UN fora. So when there are resolutions being adopted, when there are decisions about where to allocate resources by governments, the joint interests that horse racing has that are linked also with the same conversations we hear a lot about also in football and cricket, these are all aligned in a way to make a more unified, collaborative approach to tackling these problems that we're discussing.
I know you're doing a lot, and if anyone didn't think that that's a lot to do, bear in mind this is a global program from Ronan. I know he has a few staff, but I know he travels an awful lot as well. So you're doing a lot. There are a lot of programs. There's a lot of engagement with stakeholders, most major sports, and we're glad to say racing as well, because we're committed as a sport to upholding integrity, anti-corruption. But how's it going? What's the progress, do you think, and what's the outlook?
I think what I found interesting the last 2 years in particular is you're getting many more mechanisms and task forces being created to help anticipate and be proactive in tackling all these problems. And I think what's interesting is that, first of all, you have a lot of sports organizations being proactive. So, for example, you have the FIFA Integrity Task Force that was created to protect the World Cup events. So it's event-focused. The International Olympic Committee did the same thing also with the Olympics, to set up a monitoring task force to look at match fixing and competition manipulation. This has also happened during the Copa America by CONMEBOL and CONCACAF to think about some of the threats that that event was facing. So they're like sports-led, but you're also seeing now governments being a lot more proactive. And just recently, I think maybe some Australians in the room here, but just a collaboration between the US, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and the UK to look at the issue of sports crime and really raise that above to their law enforcement capacity, and to get more collaboration around tackling that at a global level. So we're seeing a lot more proactive initiatives bringing together different stakeholders, and I think it's kind of a buzzword, but the multi-stakeholder approach, it's useful. It's one that I think we need to get a bit more of a standardized approach to understand what works when we're coming together, and not make it just a PR communication issue, but really show impact. And I think that's where we want to get to, is seeing more investigations, more sanctioning, more prosecutions, to make illegal things actually illegal. So we're talking about illegal betting, but perhaps raise the profile from not only just a regulatory issue, but a criminal justice issue, which requires and gets the type of resources it needs to tackle what is pretty serious, a pretty organized form of crime.
Yep. Thank you very much, Ronan. Perhaps we can cut back to racing, Cliona, and you'll take us to the end. I should remind everyone that the app does work. There's one particularly intelligent man in the audience who sent a question, and I'll ask that shortly. So please do send some more. It's not impossible. But first, we'll ask Cliona to talk us through what she does and how she feels about the future. We're talking a lot about technology. Disruptive technology has been our theme for this year. How do you think technology is impacting how you, as a racing administrator, approach racing integrity? And how do you think racing authorities everywhere should respond to technology changes?
I think technology is bringing a lot of positives and negatives in to us. It's helping us with what we do, but it's also bringing our issues to a global stage. Like, we've had a case where we were very clear that there was a horse laid who was found to have a sedative in its system post-race and had been pulled up due to very bad performance. But the bets that were coming on, or the laying of that horse, were coming from the Middle East. This was not a very big race. This was not something that you would expect, but this is the issue. Technology is giving racing a much bigger stage, which is what we need and what we need to show our product, but with that becomes dangerous and allows people to have access. And what we're seeing mainly in the regulated market, you can follow those trends, but the illegal market is the area where you're going to see most of the activity which will impact on the sport. And that is the part that we as racing administrators and as sports administrators, full stop, can struggle with, because it's not really within our skill set and our understanding. So we do need people like James, like Tom, who have the information, have the understanding, and can give us that information in a form that can be used by us in integrity matters, so that we can push the story together for the body who are the tribunal who are dealing with issues around licensees. And Tom said earlier, we have to deal with our licensees. You get a lot of information, and it can often be tempting to follow the information trail, and you go down rabbit holes on occasions where there's significant pieces of information, but they're outside of our powers to deal with. But that information, when put together with the rule breaches that exist or may have existed in specific cases, allow us to inform our panels and let them make a proper decision around what sanctions may be imposed and what can be dealt with. right now we get betting information, our race day stewards on race day, through our cooperation with our colleagues in BHA, get regular betting information as to what's going on in the market before the race and during the race, if there's any, or during the meeting, if there's any moves that are concerning. And if we have a concern around the performance of a horse or performance of a licensee, we can get that information that can augment what we're looking at and give us a guide as to where we need to look. The footage these days, in comparison to what you would have had years ago, we are getting brilliant footage that allows us to, or allows our race readers to accurately assess what is happening. And my colleagues in all racing authorities, but specifically in the IHRB, are extremely experienced and understand what they're looking at. And with the footage, they are now able to really give a strong view and a strong assessment of what actually happened. And that really assists in what we do. It's also the access to people like Ronan, Tom, James, and all our other colleagues. You now have an information sharing structure within horse racing and with other sports that assists. So when I go back to that meeting, or the horse I talked about with the sedative, we were able to be advised that the individual who was connected to the white label bet laying the horse was and had been previously involved in match fixing cases in other sports. So that again added to the entire picture that we were putting in front of our tribunal. Yeah. And again, education is extremely important. Going back to the licensees, if they don't understand, and as James has shown, a lot of the illegal betting websites, you're not necessarily aware they're illegal. So showing them what that is. But I think we can do more to educate our governments in terms of what illegal betting, like the focus in a number of jurisdictions from a government level is problem gamblers. Yeah. They don't necessarily see what over-regulation or that what they may be taking steps to do is over-regulation. So technology can be a help, can be a hindrance, but I think if we leverage it properly and using learnings from other areas, we're going to be moving forward and hopefully in a positive way.
And obviously we're talking about integrity today and illegal betting, or illegal betting and integrity, but have your concerns in your racing authority and other racing authorities changed in relation to integrity? What do you think that's changing over time, or are they the same integrity challenges? What are the key integrity concerns for racing authorities, and do you see them changing in the future?
I think concerns, they tend to stay the same, but different priorities come up at different times. There's trends, unfortunately, in integrity, and you will see that. There's always going to be a concern of welfare for all participants, not just our equine participants, but our jockeys, our trainers, and they come up, and sometimes when you have welfare concerns, they can lead to breaches of rules and integrity issues. Of course, if you have a licensee who is financially unstable, they are more open or vulnerable to being linked or being accessed, and someone seeking to then fix a match or fix a race by bribes or giving extra money. And if you have problem gamblers, then they're open to, or they're vulnerable to other issues with the bet or the gambling brokers and the other individuals involved. From our side, unfortunately, they can always be different issues, and you're looking at them. What we have now is those extra tools in our toolbox with the betting information to understand, are we looking merely at a jockey who may have had a bad day or may have just misjudged the race, or are we looking at an issue where there's more behind it and there's individuals behind that? Sometimes you can have a level of empathy for the licensees involved that may not be aware of what they're getting themselves involved with and may not even know who's behind it. But unfortunately, they're the licensees. They have signed up, well, unfortunately for them, they have signed up to the rules of racing, and they have to be dealt with in accordance with the rules to give that message that horse racing is not accepting of any breaches to the integrity. It is a fundamental part of the reputation of the sport that we maintain that.
I think that's a very good point to close the questions to Cliona, because I understand the theme for the ISHA coming up when they release a new racing integrity handbook later this year will be a focus on integrity. I think the important thing about that is it shows that horse racing as a sport is leading other sports in integrity. I do truly believe that, and we'll see that, and I think Cleaner's comments have reflected that. So James, we have questions on the We app here, and I'm going to ask you one because we have to, because it's the only question I've seen on the app. It's in our session, I'd just like to point out. That, why can't governments block the accessibility of illegal betting websites? Martin Perbrick. No, it's not. Go on.
Well, they can, and some do. There are jurisdictions in Europe which maintain large, very large, long lists of blacklisted websites. I know that Australia, the Australian Communications and Media Authority, will take action against certain websites. I think they're mostly focused on online casino rather than illegal betting on racing websites. And our colleagues at the Singapore Gambling Regulatory Authority, for example, in our day job at the Hong Kong Jockey Club, we regularly send them websites which we've identified as targeting people in Singapore. We regularly report websites which are targeting people in mainland China through the mainland Ministry of Finance, which oversees that, has an online reporting channel. So yes, you can do it. You can block websites. The challenge is that it's essentially a game of whack-a-mole, right? You block one, and these operators will typically be on a network of tens, hundreds, even thousands of mirror websites, which are exact replicas of the main one. So you block one, you block abcbet.com, and every customer is immediately migrated over to 123bet.com, which is an exact replica, same login, same account detail, and everything. So, and some of these providers who I mentioned in my talk will actually set you up not just with one URL, but with a network of 1,000, 5,000 networked mirror websites.
Yeah.
So it's, the efficacy of such blocking is open to question. I personally think it is something that governments and regulators should try to do. I mean, in some jurisdictions, they don't bother whatsoever, but it's at least doing something, but the efficacy is open to question.
Yeah. But very well put. It's in fact, I would say chasing websites is a never-ending challenge, and I've always been worried about that, especially with the use of VPNs, which are ubiquitous around the world. And so we're coming to the end, but I want to leave it on a positive note and talking about how we can solve problems rather than just raise problems. Tom, how do you see the future looking? Because you're in the problem-solving business, really, for racing in terms of integrity. How does the problem look? What positive things can we do in racing to protect integrity?
Yeah, I probably just to restate that technology provides a real opportunity at doing things on a bigger, better scale and at lesser cost. And I think what we're seeing is that organisations, particularly racing authorities and those with an interest in integrity, are now working together in a lot closer way than they have done in the past. I think there's real opportunity for the legal market, the regulated market going forward, to compete with the illegal market. If we can communicate that to gambling regulators, that the problem of the illegal market is there has to be a change. It has to increase and make that regulated market more dynamic, so it can challenge and can compete with the illegal betting market. So I think there is opportunity there.
Brilliantly put, very positively. And perhaps we can stop there because we want to make sure we have enough time for Natasha. Thank you very much, James, Tom, Ronan, Cleaner, and I wonder if you could give your thanks to them for all of their expertise.